Good morning, Middle Earth. Welcome to Flickin' Reel, your source for news, reviews, and daily discourse. Hello, Flickin' fanatics. Welcome back to another episode of Jesse and Scott reviewing Rings of Power. This is episode 6. We got 2 more left, and we can't wait to talk about the direction they're going, and we'll join you right after this. Hello, Flickin' fanatics. What's going on? It's another morning, as Mike K said. Good morning, crusty crew. That is us in the morning, just sleep deprived and half alive. It's been my new mantra moving forward every time I'm recording in the early AMs. But Scott, how's it going today? Have you had your coffee?
I am partaking of it currently.
Alrighty. So
trying to snap myself out of it.
The freshest Fox we can get here on Fox Talks, Tolkien Talks. I'm just going to keep making up whatever that title is.
Keep repeating, reorganizing, and rearranging the words, and eventually something will stick, or it'll be new every week.
Absolutely. Pretty soon our title's going to sound like the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. But anyways, moving on, we're working on our caffeine, but what we have ingested is our healthy dose of Middle-earth and Tolkien. This week, we had a delicious meal with episode 6, where, as Scott and I were discussing prior to the beginning of filming this, is that it was a very focused episode. Anybody new to this show, right here, and I believe also in the title, it says spoilers. So if you haven't watched episode 6, I'll give you some grace. It did just come out just a day and a half ago, but catch up, come back to us, put us on the watch later list, and we would love to have you here an hour later. Anyway, Scott, this is going to be a very easy episode to follow because usually we're bouncing all over the place and trying to find out what came when, but we're with Arondir and Bronwyn and Galadriel and Elendil. How am I doing on names?
No, you're nailing. I'm impressed. Awesome. You're nailing everyone.
Scott's like he's a proud dad right now.
Elendil's son?
Is that Isildur? I almost was like,
well done. You got it. Yes, you got them all. You nailed it. And yeah, very focused. We're in the Southlands. We get a little bit of the ship crossing of the Númenóreans. But we begin the very start of the episode with
or shall we something call it that was Proto Mordor, or
basic Mordor by the end of the episode. Yeah. But anyways, I love at the very beginning when you see Sauron planting the seeds. I'm still sticking with that. I believe Adar is Sauron.
You do still?
Yes, I believe he's leading a false trail. Sauron disguised himself as an elf, and he called himself a Tanatar in some of the Tolkien lore, and I believe this is just a variation of that, and that's why he's trying to say that he killed Sauron. That's why he knew everything to do. That's why they're worshiping him. He's trying to lead a false trail as though Sauron doesn't exist and that he's the new guy, but he really is Sauron. Anyways,
he's a walking red herring.
I love the fact that they, like the elves, he planted the seeds at the very beginning. The new life and right before battle, and then that came back around, and Arondir did the exact same thing with Bronwyn. Was such a beautiful moment in the episode. It was so good.
This episode stressed us out. Yes, the action was awesome. I've told Lauren, for anyone that doesn't know, Lauren, my wife, that Scott has essentially had a bit of a death wish, not really, but for Arondir. He's like, every episode, he's might not make it out of this one. So the entire
no, they're saving that for episode 8. It'll happen.
So the entire time they're fighting, and the amount of like close calls he's had, and every bit of impact that he took, Lauren's staring at me. She's like, "Damn it, Scott!" Like he wished
Dude.
it into existence.
When he fought the giant, okay, we're jumping around a little bit, but this
Okay.
this episode literally was
It's a big action scene, mostly a lot of it.
well, okay, and the mirror imaging that they used for the tower when it was collapsing, and that it looked like Barad-dûr with the torch burning at the top in the shape of an eye, collapsing and falling down. Everything was a shadow.
That Arondir came up with was so good, where like the log came in and like shut the doors, and then they had like the tower collapse on them in flames, and I was like, well done.
It was so well done, but it also foreshadowed. It looked like Barad-dûr falling in The Return of the King, and it just I think they intentionally echoed some of those things in order to mirror it, but it was beautifully done. And that fight sequence at the very beginning was awesome, and then it got to see how the Southlanders escaped, kind of protected themselves.
That sounds like a spin-off show.
The Southlanders,
yeah.
But how they got to the safe space, and basically back to where the village was with the tavern and everything, and they kind of got ready for war. But one of the most harrowing things when they send in the first soldiers and they kill them all, they wipe them out. After losing some of their own people, and then they started to discover that those were the Southlanders that rebelled and went to join Sauron, and then were sent back, and they killed them all. So they were killing their own people. Oh, so brutal, so brutal. I mean, and then the real orc army shows up.
And I understand being pretty broken up about it, but at that point of treachery and hostility, are they your own people still?
Yes,
like, you might have the same origins, but
they were the only. I feel like the only guy who's not really their guy is the guy who led them, and
speak it into existence.
Yes, if around, that's fine. That's fine. There has to be a sacrificial lamb in the series. It's gonna happen.
It just so happens my wife is very much in love with that lamb.
I thought they were almost gonna kill. You know what? We're jumping ahead. But when the real orc army shows up and they basically storm in, wipe everyone out, and that battle with the Arondir and the giant orc, when he gets thrown through the fence and then body slammed into the well and then choking out, and when he pulls the spike out of the eye.
Everybody's saying that this is G-rated Game of Thrones. He was leaking eye blood juice into his mouth. I don't want to hear about G-rated Game of Thrones.
When Sean watches back my reaction video, he's gonna see me cringing grotesquely. Like I was literally like twisting in my seat, like I can't see this. Like one eye, like doing this thing. I don't want to watch
it. You and the orc both one eyeing it, huh?
Oh, dude, totally. It was, but yeah, with it dripping in his mouth and everything, I was like, this is like I want to vomit right now watching it. So good though. But that battle, then they get inside, they get everyone protected, and I love when Adar comes in and he just basically tells them what he wants, and they start one by one murdering all the people until finally Theo's like, I know where it's at. And he shows him. And they pull out the weapon, the sword, that's hidden under the floorboard. He must have followed Arondir to see it.
Yeah. That's what we were wondering is how does he know?
Well, he's so curious about it. And Arondir would have stood there and let everyone die. But except for Bronwyn, maybe. And that's how that was the breaking point. When they moved to Bronwyn, they put the sword to her throat. Then and prior to that, Bronwyn gets shot through the shoulder with a spear or an arrow. Oh,
and like I said, it was stressful between Arondir and Bronwyn. I'm like, leave these two alone.
Oh my gosh, it was bad. But they repair the damage, having to cauterize it and burn the wound. This one was not easy on the stomach. It made you cringe a lot. But we also had the romance moment.
Yeah,
we finally got Arondir and Bronwyn talking about a life after this battle with them and Theo.
Yeah,
when it was a beautiful moment. And then when they saved Bronwyn, like Theo is hugging him both. Like, and remember in the very first episode, Theo was basically calling Arondir elf and treating him like he was some foreign second-class citizen. It's funny, the elves treat the men like that and the men treat the elves like that.
Right.
There's not this good mix. But we finally got the romance moment with it. But within all that, they finally get the sword, and then you hear the hooves coming, and the Numenorians show up. But
I wanted
I
to
do want to jump
scream. It was very much like Helm's Deep with like Gandalf coming
one
over the.
literally with my on my reaction video. That's what I like. This is the this is
Come
Helm's
to you
Deep.
now at the turning
This
of
is
the
the right
tide.
of this is the right of the Rohirrim coming in. This is it. So much in this episode echoed the Return of the King, Two Towers, all the Lord of the Rings movies. It was beautifully done. But prior to that, we did get this awesome moment on the ship before the Numenorians landed. We got to see Isildur coming up and actually having a conversation with Queen Muriel, or sorry, with Galadriel, and I love that he's like, when we'll be able to see land, and he's like, it'll be visible in just a moment, in just a minute.
She's seen it for an hour.
Yeah, and he's like, well, how long have you been able to see it? And she's like, it's been visible for hours, and like, elf eyes can see clearly, and it's one of those things where. But then she asks about Isildur's mother, like what happened, even talking to Elendil. And I love that he dodges the question for a moment, and then as he's walking away, she drowned, and it's so like such a gut punch type of moment.
Yeah,
but it really goes a long ways. But then later in the episode, we get a retouch to that. After the Numenorians come in, they crash through, they start killing all the orcs, mowing everyone down. We see fleeing of Adar. But Adar sent somebody on a secret mission before everyone could get there. And that's going to come back to bite them.
Just like Transformers, there's more than meets the eye with that one.
100%. And so they send...
I'm still holding out hope that we haven't seen Sauron.
It's possible. It's totally possible. I would say this.
We talk
that
about
after watching this...
After
watching this episode, I feel like it's more likely that Sauron is someone we haven't seen than it is Halbrand.
Well, I love that
Adar or
we're
something
on the
you
same
haven't
side, because after this episode, the internet has been like sufficiently split in half with people that are like, "Oh, now I'm convinced it's Halbrand," another half saying there's no way, and I agree. I'm not 100% sure that we haven't seen him, but I think it's more likely we haven't seen him than it being Halbrand. If anything, if not just a completely original character, Halbrand is either going to end up being like the Witch King or one of the Wraiths, because he's clearly. A lot of
people think he might be the leader of this the Dead Army,
or that. I mean, that's possible. Because
I thought this too. I'm with Haskell here. He turns into one of the Nazgul right here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we both clicked at the same time.
That's okay. Yeah. That's what happens when you get moderator privileges.
I'm cool now. But I think that's more likely. But jumping back, when he takes him down, or they're riding into the woods, and by the way, also the sword play.
I didn't think about this. That is sad. Isildur dies full of arrows floating down the river.
Yeah,
or at least that's in the movie.
Yeah, but he didn't drown.
No.
I'm pretty sure one of those arrows did the job. And if it didn't, boy, that probably led to him drowning. What was I going to say? So the sword play and the action sequences. I also love that Isildur is waiting back with Queen Muriel, and she sees that Elendil is in trouble and tells him to go, and he rides to battle specifically to save his father. Such a great moment. And he's literally, Elendil is dragged to the ground by like 8 orcs, ripping him and his horse sideways over.
I kept waiting for everybody to die in this episode. It was so freaking stressful. And we don't know what the body count is when the next episode starts, because some big stuff happened.
Yeah, but let's say this. Elendil, Isildur, those guys have to make it. Galadriel, she makes it.
Right.
So people dying that are main characters right now, we've got some disposable new ones.
Scott, stop it. Stop
it. Anyways, I think those moments were really well done, but then also them Galadriel riding into battle and like falling off the side of her horse.
That's what
stabbing,
I was
cutting
say.
guys off.
Listen, she did it twice. They threw stuff at her, and she's just like, and
I'm gonna lean.
Swerve.
But even Halbrand, when Halbrand circles around and Galadriel is chasing Adar like violently fast, and can I just also say when they use the Quenya speech, the High Elven speech. It's beautiful, but then they slipped in the black speech of Mordor
Yes,
when they were
did.
coming in, and I was like,
The
ooh,
subtitles even say black speech, and you go,
which made me
"Ooh."
think, okay, 100%, this is Sauron. Has to be Sauron. Yeah, with only 2 more episodes, like, what are they going to throw at us, and where are they going to end
The
this?
finale is going to be gnarly, I think.
Absolutely, but I think so. As they're chasing him, and she's riding, she's like encouraging him in the elven speech, and then Halbrand comes around the other side, and he's riding head on, and he goes the low route and swipes the legs out of the horse. Just so good. And I, like, when that happened, I immediately felt bad. I'm like, oh, poor horse. But I know they're stunt horses, and I know they're trained to do this kind of stuff. But at
Right.
the same time, I'm like, oh, like, I hate seeing animals get hurt.
I'm
But
glad that it got back up. That made me feel a lot better. I'm like, no, horse.
oh yeah, 100%. Like,
Well, it's like, I
seeing
feel
it back up
terrible
and
for the
walking, I was like,
Oliphants or Elephants, whatever they're called in Return of the King. I was like, these
Oliphants.
guys are just charging through. Leave them alone.
But then after that, we see Halbrand with that javelin pike standing with it over his throat, and they have a conversation. And Adar, I think Adar knows exactly who Halbrand is, but he keeps treating him like, I don't even remember who you are. Like, he's not even as significant.
You are.
Yeah. Oh,
and Halbrand's like, you will.
oh, and he's ready to stab him, but then Galadriel calls him back and wakes him up to it. And then we see him arrested. He's chained to a post. We see this banquet going on in the village. Everything's all hunky-dory.
Mhm.
And Adar's not even phased, but we get Galadriel. So we get Halbrand having a little bit of an interrogation with him. And then it flips over to then we have this beautiful conversation between Galadriel and Adar, and him, I believe him leading a false trail about how he split Sauron in 2. He killed him. Like, yeah, right. Sure. The main lieutenant of Morgoth,
Convenient that the enemy disappears, and then you're like, oh yes, while nobody knew where he was, I killed him. And so nobody's seen him for centuries.
No, I think he is him. And he's trying to lay a false trail that he's dead and trying to cover his own path. That's my personal theory. I'm still leaning towards Adar. I'm probably wrong, but I feel like they're hiding him in plain sight. That makes the most sense. That the shocking reveal will be, it's like, he was right here the whole time.
I mean, side trail. I want to get back to what's going on with like the mystics or whatever, and Stranger eventually also, because that's,
you got 2 episodes.
Thought, Slim Shady was Sauron.
Those mystics seem to be coming after the Stranger. So the question is, okay, well, what's going on with the Stranger? And is maybe that one lead mystic just bald, clean-shaven, or short-haired, clean-shaven Saruman? And then we get the old crazy mystic is Gandalf, the Stranger. There's a lot going in between those things, and there's so many storylines that are still to be fulfilled. Like, how far along are they going to be on the kiln to be able to? And
do the path of the forge intercede with like what's going on here? Do they remain separate? How is the story of Elrond and Durin and Mithril going to? I mean, we know how Mithril ties into everything, but like, is it going to directly tie into what's going on with Adar and Arondir? Arondir. Man, I cannot back to back say all these names. I'm working on it.
Can I just say also, later in the episode, Elendil gets to talk to his son, right? So we get the flashback or flash forward of Adar is being interrogated, right? And they finish that conversation. The Harfoot seemed like a different show at times, a little bit, but it'll all come together. I think so. We're at this banquet. Adar's being interrogated by Galadriel. Halbrand has to stop her. Then they go out to the woods. We have this beautiful conversation between the two, and everyone keeps passing this wrapped up sword around, one person to the next person, and but we finally get this conversation between those two about how they're finally finding peace in all of these things going on, and Halbrand's settling into the idea that he's going to be king. She's settling into the fact that she doesn't have to keep battling against Sauron, but they found kind of a camaraderie with each other, and it almost seemed like they might be wanting to turn this into a romantic moment for a second. I was like, please don't. Like we've got that with Bronwyn and Rondir. Plus, I already know that Galadriel marries Celeborn, and
well, we also can't you can't talk in every iteration of like Tolkien stuff about how rare the union between elves and man is, and then every time we see an elf, they're interested in another, like a man, or in The Hobbit, it was a dwarf.
People talk about that, and there's only been 3 unions as far as marriage, but there's been more that almost happened. Turin Turambar fell in love with Findril, who was the daughter of Orodreth, who was the brother of Finrod Felagund, or the son of Finrod Felagund. So, but that's longer story. Thing is, most of them are female elves with a man. Arondir and Bronwyn is the first one that's reversed. It's a regular man and a female elf. This is the first one where it's a male elf and a female woman. And so it's one of those, it's the only one that's flipped backwards. And then
did you like the parallel of Elendil talking to the horse to calm it down in what language was it? That was very much like Aragorn
Sylvan.
In yeah.
No, that's what I was going to say earlier. They used the Sylvan tongue there, so they didn't use the Quenya. That's the High Elven. The Sylvan is the Elven speech that wasn't originated with, because the elves were kind of separated. The ones who went to Valinor and then came back, their language adapted, and the Sylvan elves never went back to Valinor, and so their language kind of got separated, and it's a different tongue, like a different dialect of Elvish. And the fact that Elendil knew the Sylvan to speak to the horse was beautiful. And I really enjoy the fact that they're tying in all the different languages. But then we also saw this wonderful moment, and Elendil is talking to Isildur about the horse, and he asks him where he learned that, and he's like, from your mother. And they finally have this nice moment, and they hug. But I was going back because that's where we get the Trimble, or I can't remember the guy's name. It's going to bother me. But the guy who takes the sword, sneaks away, and he puts it inside and basically opens the dams. And the whole point, I love how they show this kind of snaking underneath the village. And so the village gets hit with water. It's destroying the village. Everyone's fleeing and trying to run. But it's all leading back to Mount Doom, or Orodrim, where it drops inside and all that water and steam hit, igniting a volcano and the pressure blast. And then they get hit with the water, and then the fire's coming right back at them. And what a horrible, violent moment. And what's crazy...
Thank you.
Waldreg, thank you. What's crazy is when they cut back, Adar's gone. His cuffs are still in place. He's just out of them. That's Sauron, ladies and gentlemen.
Trixie.
It's going to happen. I just feel it in my bones that's got to be Sauron.
Did you stick around for the preview for the next episode?
I did. And there they cut back to the Harfoots, and we got dwarves, we've got Elrond, we've got all these other storylines. They got basically 2 hours left to tie up a lot of storyline.
I think 3 main storylines. No, 4. We have 4 main storylines going on. They spent the entirety of this episode getting 2 of them together. So that's good. So now we still have to catch up with the Harfoots and Durin and Elrond. And also I'm sure we'll get more follow-up with this. But
well, I think this failure also is going to be what leads to Pharazôn trying to claim power in Numenor.
Oh, do you think we're going to go back to Numenor at some point? I think
the remnants of the Numenorians that survived that blast are going to go back and try and flee. And when they do and they get back, they're going to find that Pharazôn has usurped power and stolen power from Queen Muriel, or Queen Regent. And in Tolkien lore, Pharazôn forces her to marry him so he can steal power. But I think this failure is going to give him enough pull with all the people to take power and basically have a vote of we're going back to the Star Wars Senate. We're going to have a vote of no confidence in Queen Muriel and
Chancellor Valorum.
Yeah. And we're going to grant
Played by Terrence Stamp,
universal emperor power to Palpatine for our safety.
Right? No,
Giving over power for the name of safety is the dumbest thing that any human could ever do. Just saying.
Yeah, I always get sorry. I went on the side thing. I always get Terrence Stamp and Malcolm McDowell confused. And I'm trying to remember who Chancellor Valorum was, and I went off on a tangent in my head. I think it's Terrence Stamp, though.
It is.
Okay, cool. All right, great. So I missed the last 15
mostly
seconds.
Sure. No. Anyways,
moving forward.
But they come back to this great idea of kind of at the end of this, Galadriel is consumed by this volcano blast. And I love in the teaser that they show her getting up in the
carnage.
ash. Yeah, absolute carnage. Wipes
out
everybody.
Like that flash of like where it was like all red and people were drowning and stuff that we saw in, I think it was like the first episode.
Yep. The War of Wrath.
Thank you. Yes.
The crazy thing for me now is, okay, where do we go from here? Are the Southlanders dead? What's going on with Halbrand? Where did Adar escape to? Did he cut his own cuffs? Did he just sneak out? Like, what happened? There's so many little things that they have to pull together. And literally 2 hours worth of show is all we got left. And I know there's going to be more seasons.
Right.
But I hate having to wait for another season because I'm not that guy.
I'm glad. Like, I feel terrible for you because this is like your Sandman. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of shows and a lot of content to get us from A to B, but like, not only, at least there's going to be a season 2. Like, we're confident they already, the money's been spent forward. But Sandman, I still don't know if I'm getting another season. So not only is it a wait, but it's a wait to even find out if it's happening.
So, Lauren commented earlier, the parallels between Galadriel's convo and Adar and her convo with Frodo made me want to sob. It's such a beautiful moment, too, because she's even offering some grace and mercy to Adar initially with the fact that she knows that Morgoth kidnapped and twisted and mutated a whole bunch of elves. That's where the Uruks came from, and he just keeps calling himself an Uruk.
Right.
Which is... The Uruks are the ones that, Sauron utilizes heavily, or Saruman, when he sends them. Yeah, the Uruk-hai. And so it's one of these things where their conversation, but also talking about what happened with Morgoth, the fact that they call him father. There's all these different things, him trying to mislead. I actually felt like this went a long way for Galadriel in helping explain some of why she's so frustrated and why she's lacking in patience with so much. And
Adar tries to call her out and says, if you were hunting like so hard for this darkness, you should have just like looked in a mirror. Trying to say that it's like it looks like I'm not the only living elf that has been touched by the darkness or affected by
shaped by the darkness. Yes. Yeah. And that was a very telling moment. And other people, like Galadriel is also ambitious. Yes. Even in Return of the King, in the Fellowship of the Ring, when Frodo offers her the ring, she even admits for a long time, I have to admit, I've what is this? Almost desired this moment or dreamt of this moment for a long time to be able to claim power over her foes. But it takes her a long time to finally get to the point to recognize this is toxic. And if I do this, there's no coming back. And I think that's even right here where we see that conversation with Adar is if you go too far towards the dark side and towards the darkness and leaning into the evil power to overcome evil, you're going to just be consumed. You're going to be part of it yourself. And it really was, I think, one of the better moments. Yes, we do get up this early, not intentional. But this idea, I feel like it finally progressed Galadriel to getting to a stage where she wasn't just a petulant child, like, I'm going to fight this, I'm going to kill these people, like having to think, what is the end result I want?
I feel like I'm struggling with Arondir, Adar, and Cassian Andor, and I'm just like, I need some more difference in these names.
It's a good thing they didn't go with a Tanatar. Adar, Arondir, Andor. Yeah, there are a lot of there are other A names we can come up with.
Like
Where's an Alan?
ANDR. Yeah.
But either, with all that being said, this episode was fantastic.
It was a great
Holy
episode.
cow.
Loved it.
And we got to see the reshaping of Mordor. That Southlands is the land of Mordor that's been basically now, thanks to the volcano, reshaped to look a little bit more like what we remember.
More Mordor.
Yeah, it's more Mordor. That's a mouthful if you try and say it too much. More. But it was really clearly it's too early, and but now that we have that happen, I'm curious as to okay, what happens to the Southlanders? They can't stay in the area. The orcs, were probably hiding. There's more orcs hiding in a safe space to be able to come out. Adar is free; he escaped, and so.
Lots of things to still unpack and answer for, and I'm not expecting full closure, but I just hope that we have a satisfying conclusion to this first season. I think it's been really great so far. So
they're going to behead Ned Stark in the last episode to make you want to see season 2. Hey, listen, if somebody hasn't seen season 1 of Game of Thrones, that's not my fault.
Sean Bean doesn't do well
past.
In fantasy environments.
If you see Sean Bean cast in anything, he will die.
Yes, he comes with an expiration date on his contract every movie he signs up for.
I'm only good for 3 episodes. That's all I can do.
Right. The best I can do, 3 episodes.
But basically, I have a feeling that episode 8 of this, last episode of season 1, will leave us. I'm not going to say who I think they will kill, even though I've already told you multiple times this episode and in all the previous episodes. But I think that will kind of be the hanging thing to leave us for the next episode, is we're going to see. It will build us up, give us some good closure, but then it's going to leave us like son of a biscuit wanting that next one. Sorry.
All right. Well,
Arondir's dead.
Stop it. Stop it. Wrapping up really quick, I just want to do some plugs for some stuff that we have coming up. Thank you guys for joining us so much. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., dropping on our audio feeds on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I'm missing some big ones, Anchor, all the stuff that you see in the description or the link in our descriptions. Anyways, Fansplash Podcast is back, which is one of the first things I did in the podcasting universe. Myself and Tyler Hall just talking shop. That's where Scott started podcasting with us as well. So a lot of things started with the Fansplash Podcast. So we're brushing the rust off, discussing things in genre culture and all that good stuff. Tyler Hall building this great graphic right here. And then again, 8 o'clock, but Pacific Standard Time PM on Monday, Fansplash is crossing over with the Video Chronic or Video Drew channel, and we're going to be doing a watch along for Fear itself just in time for spooky season. And there's Jesse Plemons is in that show, Elizabeth Moss, a lot of people that became very well known after the show. And the show is from 2008, only ran 1 season, but I wanted to make sure that they got exposure to this because they've never seen it, which is a common theme here on the channel. So make sure you're also checking out You've Never Seen It with Allison Salamondi. I don't have a graphic ready for that one at the moment, but just thought while we're plugging things, I would plug that. So Scott, anything you want to say to all the lovely people that came by and hung out with us for the last 35 minutes?
So many people are now, after this episode, saying this series is finally getting good. The series has been good since episode 1. This is 6 for 6. It has been fantastic. I love this show. Oh, sorry. I'll be quiet. But I love this show. Yes, they've changed some things from the lore, but they've made good changes. And they didn't really change a lot. They've had to add because there was very little story. That being said, give the show a chance. It has built and built and built and built steadily. And we've got 2 episodes left. And I have a feeling that with the quality of writers, directors, and producers on this show and actors, they're going to pay off huge in these last 2 episodes. But it's been good all the way through.
The whole time.
So no more bandwagon jumping or no more hopping on the bandwagon. Actually, get on the bandwagon.
I was going to say.
Join us. It's been fantastic.
The views count. Yeah.
Let's quit out with all the negative talk. If you haven't watched every episode, you can't poo-poo this show.
Yeah.
Until you've seen them all, you can't poo-poo it.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining us, guys. It's been guys, gals, and the like. It's been a lot of fun, and we're going to catch you next week when we talk about the penultimate episode, episode 7, and whatever that may entail. We're very excited, but until then, keep it real, and we'll catch you again soon.